Welcome to Media Monitor, the show that unpacks the biggest news stories of the week, and we live to you on SABC News Channel 404 on DSTV. I'm Sakina Kamwendo. Good morning and thank you for tuning in. Now let's take a look at what you can look forward to in this hour. We'll interrogate the pending unseating of President Jacob Zuma from the Union buildings as unfolding developments across government departments help fuel speculation. We'll also take a look at the latest developments in the unfolding spat between the Democratic Alliance and embattled Mayor of the City of Cape Town, Patricia de Lille. And lastly, we will take a look at the SABC SASSA interview that outraged the public and challenged the SABC editorial policy. But first, let's take a look at the news headlines. The Asset Forfeiture Unit has moved to seize the controversial dairy Vrede farm in the Free State. A staff to President Zavi says he is happy that the AFU acted on their complaint. It has been reported that money was looted from the public purse by politicians in partnership with the Gupta family. According to leaked Gupta emails, 30 million rand was laundered to the family. The money originally belonged to the Estina, which is a company that won a tender of 500 million rand to build a dairy farm. Now, the dairy project was used as a front to benefit those who are politically connected instead of empowering the poor. As pressure mounts for President Jacob Zuma to step down, it's business as usual with his presidential duties, including his tight schedule of international engagements. Zuma will depart today for Liberia, where he will attend the inauguration of President newly elected George Weah. And yesterday, the president met with his counterpart from South Sudan, President Salva Kiir, and Zuma assured Kiir that South Africa would continue to support South Sudan in its quest for peace. Business Leadership South Africa has welcomed the appointment of new board at Power Utility Eskom. BLSA says it reflects government's commitment to transform state-owned entities. Government announced the new board yesterday, which will be chaired by current Telkom chairperson Jabu Mabuza. Pagamani Hadebe has meanwhile been appointed Eskom acting CEO with immediate effect. And AmaZulu returned to winning ways in the ABSA Premiership at the Kings Welletini Stadium in Umlazi with a 2-0 victory over SuperSport United. Aubrey Modiba missed a penalty for United. AmaZulu are now 13th on the log, having accumulated 18 points from 16 games. Usuthu still have 2 games in hand. And those are the headlines for this hour. And we'll be back with more chats about some of the biggest stories in the next few minutes. And for now, we'll take a quick break and we'll be back with more on Media Monitor.
With the stories of abuse from the other 8, but they haven't been ready to pursue any angles. They've offered their support. They've offered the comfort to the 8, and it's been an amazing journey.
It feels like your heart actually literally sunk in your shoes.
It wasn't a long encounter. I think at the time I froze.
The way the criminal justice system deals with sexual violence is problematic. And I don't know, unless there's a fundamental change in many things, the way prosecutors deal with the victim in the matter.
For all investigative insights, stay tuned to Special Assignment every Saturday at 17:30.
Welcome back to Media Monitor, an exciting bumper-packed show for you in store this morning. So we are pleased to welcome political analyst Lukhona Mnguni, who joins us from our Durban studio this morning. We also have with us SABC foreign and acting political editor Sophie Mokoena and SABC digital news producer Tsepiso Moshe. And we'll also be joined by SABC journalist Nomawethu Solwandle from our Cape Town studios later on, as well as Professor Glenda Daniels from Media Studies at Wits University and also chairperson of the SANEF Ethics and Diversity Committee. Welcome and thank you all for joining us this morning.
Morning, Sakina.
But let's start by taking a look at the Sunday papers and what they're leading with this morning. Well, the Sunday Times, they're leading with the story about how the controversial Gupta family milked the country. Sunday Times further reveals how the Guptas and their business associates became beneficiaries of the lion's share of 220 million rand that was paid by the Free State Agriculture Department to the company Estina in a project meant to benefit the poor. City Press also leading with a story about a grand conspiracy by the Gupta family to steal money from the state with the help of senior politicians and government officials. Now, the NPA's Asset Forfeiture Unit was granted application which concerns the looting of Estina dairy project in Free State in Vrede. Now, the High Court Judge Fushir Jordan earlier this week granting that order, and the application cites Atul Gupta in his personal capacity as having received millions of rands stolen from government. The president's son, Duduzane, was a director of at least one of the Gupta companies involved in the looting. The Sunday Independent is running with a story about former Gauteng MEC for Health and Social Development, Kaitani Mahlangu, who after months and months of failing to make herself available to account for her alleged role in the deaths of more than 140 life esetimeni patients, the time has finally come for Mahlangu to finally tell the truth. And Sunday Tribune, they leading with a story about CM Lee and police and private investigators working on the case believe that Lee would still be alive had authorities fully investigated previous complaints and criminal charges laid against Hillcrest businessman Philani Ntuli, who is being charged with Lee's murder. And the Weekend Argus is running with how President Jacob Zuma's political future hangs in the balance as the top six has been tasked with the president's early resignation. It's reporting that the president's early exit may mean that he won't be delivering the State of the Nation address next month. So those are the stories making headlines in newspapers this morning, but of course on social media, also big stories trending this week. And Tsepiso Moshe joins us to walk us through some of these. Tsepiso?
Morning, Sakina, and morning to the viewers at home. Sakina, today we're only focusing on the passing of the former Bophuthatswana leader, Kgosi Lucas Mangope. Sakina, earlier this week, news broke that the former Bophuthatswana leader has died, and many people took to social media to express their heartfelt condolences. Others to lambast Mangope for his way of doing things in the Bophuthatswana government. But Sakina, I must add, there's been most tweets that we've seen were positive. There were one or two that were critical of how he used to do things. Others even comparing the way his government was managing the buildings and looking after infrastructure, while others saying now there are mud schools, there are potholes, when there's heavy floods, storage drain doesn't work. When there were sort of mixed reactions, Sakina, and here Martin Hughes saying incredibly sad news regarding Kgosi Lucas Mangope, a true gentleman and a visionary leader, eternally grateful for growing up in Bophuthatswana and having a childhood where all I knew was and there's a word missing there.
And then more of those messages. People's Councillor at Thulani Dasa says, deepest condolences to the Mangope family and loved ones on the passing of Lucas. We bid farewell to this remarkable leader who dedicated his life to improving the lives of many.
Another one from Tapelo saying, Supra Mahuma Pelo must give Lucas Mangope a provincial funeral.
And just on that, Sophie Mokoena, this is a question that many people are asking at the moment. What sort of funeral will Kgosi Lucas Mangope be afforded?
Well, of course, people have different views in terms of what needs to happen. Many believe, and those particularly who lived in Bophuthatswana, you know that much as he had negative issues that are linked to him, but there's a lot that he did for the homeland then, particularly when coming to issue of education and training skills, you know, for young people. You know, Mabana Center, we have many artists today who got training from that institution, but also there were lots of good schools in Bophuthatswana, particularly in all these former homeland areas where there were boarding schools, particularly for black children. You know that most of the people from Soweto got education in Kwakwa because there were lots of high schools and boarding schools, and that is why perhaps people feel that much as there are issues, but we must acknowledge the role he played to develop a black child in particular. Therefore, I don't know, I think a decision will be taken by the government. Supra Mahumapil must make a presentation to the President of the Republic, and President Zuma must decide. The former state president Botha was afforded an opportunity to be given an official funeral. The family declined. So it's up to the family and perhaps up to Supra to make a request to President Zuma.
We wait with bated breath because it's a very interesting one, because in the end it was about someone who in his capacity officially was an extension of the apartheid system, which was declared a crime against humanity. And I think it is for this reason that we are seeing the varying sentiments expressed around his death. Any more, Tsepiso?
And Sakina, there are pictures of the former leader of Bophuthatswana. We've put together a picture gallery of him and other former leaders. Here you can see there's a picture of him and the current Northwest Premier Supra Mahumapelo. And this one, I think he was speaking at some event. This is the Odi Stadium in Mabopane. And Sakina, many people are saying a stadium such as that in Odi Stadium in Mabopane, they are not well looked after now because Mangope is not in the leading position, and they're urging government to sort of take care of such infrastructure, because they were not only beneficial then, they are still now in good use. They could be in good use if they are well taken care of, saying infrastructure such as that should be well maintained so that it can help develop other footballers in future.
Well, let's listen to some of those voices and what people actually said in their own words.
It teaches me a lot of things. He was a disciplined man, and he was respecting a time. The main thing was a time and be punctuality on the work.
Respectable someone who was doing so much for the people of Bophuthatswana. You know, he did. You know, I remember so many things. Mabana Orchestra. I remember those days. Mabana Orchestra. It was, you know, it was excelling in South Africa.
No, I liked him very much because of his deeds. You know, he was a man of his caliber. Administratively, he was versatile with the running of the government and the governance. You see, so that's why I liked him very much.
In Zirast, we didn't have schools that Mangope built in Bophuthatswana. We used to travel to Bophuthatswana for education. He changed the pit toilets and the developments we didn't have in South Africa. When we were still using the bucket toilets, Bophuthatswana was already using flushing toilets. Mr. Mangope was far ahead in infrastructural developments. That is why most of the people used to move from South Africa to Bophuthatswana seeking greener pastures.
During the Mangope government, there were jobs in the army, the police, but today there are no longer job opportunities. Since 1994, buildings in Lihuruti are dilapidated.
When comparing his government and now, there was water, today we don't have any. Buildings are now dilapidated, but he warned us that they were going to take our properties.
A lot of talk there about governance issues and people harping back to the good old days when governance was a priority, and well done. But of course, I'm sure this debate will continue. Thank you so much, Tepiso. And after the break, we will take a look at the mounting speculation surrounding the possible removal of President Jacob Zuma from the Union building.
Violence against women, it also talks to such behavior where teachers, instead of educating kids and give them dignity, they strip them of their dignity.
The First Lady.
The First Lady, her action, it's just unacceptable. I must say that it cannot be condoned. If I had it my way, I would say we had to act and make sure that he goes to jail.
This scourge is not ceasing.
The angry people, the intolerant, it's so huge. So then the scourge finds itself within that particular environment. You cannot say that it's a standalone. It's influenced by social ills, economic challenges.
Join me in Port Sedu live every Monday to Thursday at 17:30.
Welcome back to Media Monitor. They say a day is a long time in politics. Well, this weekend proved that in no uncertain terms. News houses went into overdrive this weekend with the news that President Jacob Zuma's departure from the Union buildings may be imminent. Unfolding developments across government departments also helped to fuel the speculation. Could it be that the shift in power in Luthuli House after the elective conference has finally reawakened public servants and reminded them of the job that they have to do? But it's hardly a few weeks after that conference and things have started to move, and people are questioning whether this is about Cyril Ramaphosa as the new chief in town or whether this is about the ANC kicking into new gear. And Sophie Mokoena is with us, and of course Lukhona Nguni also joining us from our Durban studio to discuss this matter further. Well, I guess the first question is whether Jacob Zuma is on his way out as we speak, Sophie.
Well, clearly he is, but it's just a matter of time. And you are aware that as much as the Secretary General Ace Magashule on Thursday said the matter is not in the agenda, that doesn't stop ANC NEC members to raise any issue during the meeting, because the NEC is the highest decision-making body. It is for that reason on Friday the matter was raised, and we are told that it was raised by David Masondo, the newly elected member of the NEC, and was seconded or supported by Peggy Tele. And of course the NEC agreed that there's no way they can go to 2019 campaign mode with President Jacob Zuma at the helm of government, and therefore they requested the top six to engage him to find a solution to the matter. And I think right now what's happening is the discussions around what needs to happen, where and how that should be done. But for me, I think President Jacob Zuma, as a leader who claims all the time that he respects the ANC or the party, the best thing to do perhaps is to avoid causing harm to the ANC and the NEC by perhaps assisting them to find a solution to this matter.
But how is that going to be possible, given that the ticket that Cyril Ramaphosa campaigned on was one of ridding the ANC and, of course, South Africa as a nation state of corruption? And we know the allegations abound about President Jacob Zuma and those close to him who may be implicated in some of these allegations. As we've seen this weekend, it's really been jam-packed. You had yesterday the Estina story and the links there to Duzane Zuma being drawn into that one via the Guptas, his business dealings with them. Earlier in the week, you had Fikile Mbalula getting rid of Richard Mdluli, amongst others, and then also Mr. KGB himself. And that question, you know, leaves so many questions unanswered, because how did he even manage to get into state security? And ESCOM, not the least of which yesterday we saw some serious developments around that particular matter. So things are shifting, the sands are shifting, but how does the ANC go about making these changes without dealing with the Zuma question?
Well, indeed, that is why I'm saying I think the fact that the NEC has agreed that he has to go and that the top six must start engaging him, I think it's just a matter of time. It won't be long. And I think the other issue is that the law enforcement agencies must be given space to do the work. And the President of the Republic, President Jacob Zuma, knows very well that in terms of the Constitution, he can't interfere with those processes. The same with the ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa. There's no way he can stop any legal process or perhaps prosecution. The law must take its course. Perhaps what can be done is when all the legal processes and the law has taken its course, what can be done perhaps to pardon people who offended. But they must, like all South Africans, when people have erred, you know, they face the might of the law. All of us, we must do the same. And I think the ANC is fully aware that they have to allow the law enforcement agencies to do their work. And it looks like now they are doing just that, because they can see that, there is change in the country.
But the ANC is divided on this. They are by no means in agreement about how this needs to be done, if at all it needs to be done, because there are still those in the ANC who contend that President Jacob Zuma should be left to see out his term.
But unfortunately, now the highest decision-making body of the ANC agree that he has to leave. It's just a matter of time. And they have given the top six an assignment to go and engage him. Therefore, I think even those who feel that he mustn't leave, he must finish his term, unfortunately, it's not going to happen. And two, President Zuma himself have said it many times that if his party decides that he must go, he will do so without resisting. Our sources tell us that, in fact, I was told that last week he indicated to people close to him that supports him, that who are part of the NEC, that should the matter be raised and should a decision be taken, they shouldn't resist. I think he knows very well that the same happened in 2008. The then President of the Republic, who was not the President of the ANC at that time, when the NEC took a decision, even Zuma, we are told that that NEC didn't agree with that decision, but he did subject himself to the collective, and Begi was recalled. He didn't hesitate. He just did what the ANC requested him to do. And I think President Jacob Zuma, the man at that time in 2007, who was in charge, who was at the helm, who was the boss of the ANC, cannot this time around and say, no, I'm going to resist.
Lukhona Nguni in our Durban studio now. Imminent could be today, tomorrow, it could be next year. And the ANC obviously seeming to have some difficulty one way or another with effecting this replacement of President Jacob Zuma. What do you think would be the quickest route for them to effect this?
It's a very difficult one, Sakina. Remember that President Zuma himself has a few things he wants to make sure that are secured before he leaves office. There's no doubt that part of those interests is a level of some political solution to his pending court challenges. I mean, the active reactivation of the charges, for example, the ones that were set aside by Mukotedimshe, seems almost inevitable. That probably would be the easiest way, maybe, for the ANC to say, okay, let's wait until these charges are reactivated, because, I mean, in court papers it is said that the NDPP, Sean Abrahams, has actually indicated that the Hawks have managed to track down all the key witnesses, over 200 of them, in that particular case, and therefore they are also available to testify should they be called upon to do so. So that indicates quite a solid case that is still prosecutable. So that would be probably the easiest cop-out for the ANC if they do not want to be seen as the ones that humiliate the president. Remember, the president is given until end of this month by the NDPP to make his representations, and therefore a decision should be taken by that office at least by end of February or somewhere in March. Now, if you are looking at not wanting to humiliate President Zuma, as Cyril Ramaphosa has been saying and others close to him have been saying, one is that you allow him to deliver the State of the Nation address, which I think is first prize for the president to go after he has delivered that State of the Nation address. But some might be arguing that, you know, you don't need anything that has to do with the visioning of the country being entrusted in the hands of the president, or you monitor very closely what he will say to the nation in that particular speech, as the ANC taking cue from the Lekgotla that is wrapping up today, and then of course the cabinet Lekgotla that should be pending. Now, Sakina, in the sum total, imminent is really that, as you said. It could be tomorrow, it could be next week. We are unfortunately not political sangomas, and therefore not equipped to literally give detail as to what it looks like. But I think these are the circumstances that this imminent is playing around, and definitely President Zuma does want to make sure that he is cushioned. What I find is necessary is for the ANC to come out very strongly as to why they believe the president should leave office. It's one thing that we are excited about the fact that they say, you know, the top six must engage President Zuma, but why must he leave office? They must make a political case to South Africans. They must be seen as disagreeing with the legacy of governance and leadership of the president, and then not fudge around it and as if making it seem he has done good things, but because now there are two centers of power, he must vacate office. No, the reality is that, as you have said earlier, power is suddenly shifting from Saxonwell towards Lutuli House. I'm not sure whether it's probably around Parktown somewhere in its pilgrimage towards Lutuli House, but definitely power is shifting, and that must be asserted. This leadership must not be seen as playing nice with a leadership or a leader that has represented anything that stands against our constitution.
So you believe that the ANC will look for a legal solution rather than having to go as the African National Congress and remove the president. This week, of course, President Jacob Zuma launching an appeal against the North Gauteng High Court decision that the deputy president appoint the NDPP. Now, that presents an interesting scenario, because if President Jacob Zuma then fails in this bid, it means, therefore, that he, as President of the Republic, cannot fulfill some of his constitutional obligations. And therefore, would that also present the ANC with a good cop-out, as you put it, to maybe get rid of President Jacob Zuma? Because why would he remain in that position if he can't fulfill his constitutional mandate?
Well, certainly the role that the courts have played in recent weeks, Sakina, does tell us that the president is seen as no longer fit enough to, execute some of his presidential duties. This we saw with the public protector's remedial action, when she sort of said the Chief Justice must select one judge and then present it to the president for appointment. She was literally saying that, you have to restrict the powers of the president because he has become so personally conflicted, and there's no other way of putting it. He has been complicit, not only been complicit, he has been an enabler and an architect of some of this governance collapse that has happened in this country. I mean, when you listen at some people recalling secret meetings that have happened and characters that are involved, somehow, even if the voice of the president is not heard on that particular matter, he is seen as showing up. in venues of those secret meetings that were really about trying to undermine governance, whether in state-owned enterprises or whether in ministries or whether in an attempt to try and appoint people in other positions or the other with the Guptas. So certainly the president is not an innocent bystander on all that has happened. He is highly implicated. There is good enough prima facie evidence that his involvement needs real scrutiny and he needs to be held accountable. So yes, to one extent you can defer to the legal judgment, but I think legal judgments and say, no, President, because of these issues you are compromising the work of the ANC, and it's going to inevitably create conflict if the Deputy President is going to be forced to take over powers from you, because now you'll stop seeing the Deputy President as a comrade but see him as an enemy that is being used by the courts against you, and this will create conflict and friction in the presidency, which is not healthy by any means for governance. But I think legality can't substitute politics, Sakina. We still need a serious political case that this is the renewal of the ANC. It must be categorically stated, and that the legacy of the previous 10 years has done adverse harm to the ANC, and the president has been highly implicated in that harm. And how do they, moving forward, make sure that no leader can ever place themselves above the ANC, irrespective of how much power they wield within the movement itself? So I think, yes, they can use the legality, but the political case is still also very important. And I think for the ANC, with their eyes very much cast on the 2019 elections, the political case is much more important probably than relying on legality.
Interesting times indeed. Thank you so much, Lukhona Nguni, political analyst, speaking to us from Durban. And we'll speak more about people being stripped of their powers as we delve into the ongoing battle between Cape Town Mayor Patricia de Lille and the Democratic Alliance. And we'll do all of that after this break.
Very good morning to you, and thank you so much indeed for choosing Morning Live.
But I want to know the basic thing.
Griselda Lewis, SABC News, in Parktown, Johannesburg.
Zimbabwe, Mzwandile Mbeje, SABC News, Luanda, Angola.
Let's take a look at your market indicators. Thanks for staying with Morning Live. Let's bring you your sports news.
Let's take a look at your satellite image.
Set the agenda for the day with Morning Live.
A lot of us rely on tech to survive, and Africa is already a mobile-first continent.
We built mobile technology that connects motorcycle taxis to commuters and businesses in real time.
My phone was the most important thing.
Africans are using technology to innovate. On Network, we have African technology and social media news. Even robots have heard about us.
Hello, watch Network on SABC.
For African technology and social media news, join Ms. Phumelele Zondi on Network every Sunday at 9 p.m.
Welcome back. Now, Cape Town Mayor Patricia de Lille has been stripped of her powers to deal with the city's water crisis, and this responsibility has been taken over by Deputy Mayor Ian Nielsen and Mayoral Committee member Xanthia Limburg. This despite de Lille's objection that due to processes that were not followed. Meanwhile, reports came out on Friday that another city official, Melissa Whitehead, has been suspended over graft. The party's internal spats are currently playing out in public, including including the leaking of reports as well as senior leaders implicated in wrongdoing. Former DA leader Tony Leon and the party's former communications head Nick Cleland have been roped in by the city's administration to handle communication matters around this water crisis. And let's now cross to our reporter Nomawethu Solwandle from our Sea Point studios in Cape Town to give us an update on the saga. Good morning, Nomawethu, and welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me, Sakina.
So, Nomawethu, first and foremost, there was a meeting on Friday and Patricia de Lille has been stripped of her powers over this water crisis. Please, are there any more updates on that situation?
Well, Sakina, Patricia Mayor de Lille being stripped of her powers to do with anything to do with water augmentation projects in the city of Cape Town simply means that she is definitely on her way out. It's only a matter of time now. You'll remember that exactly a week ago, the federal executive gave a directive to say that she should be removed from all water augmentation projects that are in the city of Cape Town. And we know that later on she went to seek legal advice whether the federal executive could actually do something like this. And she was advised that as the mayor, she has the responsibility to ensure that the city is functioning well, and her being part of all the water projects in the city means that she is doing her work as the mayor. But we know that the DA will do anything to ensure that they push her. They're just playing with time at the moment. The meeting last week, the council meeting, was actually supposed to deal with the drought levy as well as the punitive tariffs that were later brought in. But we know that her being removed from the water projects was then sort of circumvented into the meeting. She wasn't expecting it. And the interesting part, Sakina, was that this was brought in by the deputy mayor, Ian Nelson, who is now given the responsibility to deal with all water augmentation projects in the city. So what this means is that the DA federal executive is actually using council to get what they want, and they're doing this through the deputy mayor, who is Ian Nelson. It's basically the same thing that we see happening in Parliament, Sakina. You know, if they're ever going to vote on anything in Parliament, because the ANC has got majority, they're going to win that. And that's what the DA is doing in the Cape Town City Council, because they've got about 66% majority in that council. So if they're ever going to vote on anything, they're going to get what they want.
Nomawethu, surely this blaze of negative publicity cannot augur well for the DA or the city of Cape Town. But what are the people on the ground making of this? How are they reacting to what is happening?
Well, Sakina, it's definitely not good at all for the DA, because you know that the city of Cape Town is the flagship city of the DA. They talk about clean governance, and that's how they've actually gone to win other metros around the city. Well, it's not good for the people on the ground either, Sakina, because it's basically like splitting people or the voters on the ground, because what people want to know about is whether they will have water in their taps. And the person who is going to turn around or bring a strategy to ensure that they have water in their taps is definitely going to be the winner. But you remember that last week, Sakina, Mayor Patricia de Lille was actually invited to a church, Kwalanga. She basically received a hero's welcome day. There were people holding placards saying she's the mother of the poor, no Patricia de Lille, no vote. So it's basically splitting the DA voters. And we know that Patricia de Lille has brought in especially a lot of the colored votes within the DA. So I don't think that it's actually a very good time for them to start splitting their voters at this point, because leading to 2019, it might be a tricky situation, Sakina.
Sophie Mokoena, if I could just bring you in here, given what's happening in the city of Cape Town, Nomawethu Nomawethu referred there to the legal opinion that was sought, and that legal opinion, amongst other things, stated that you cannot have Ian Neilson as the deputy mayor or any deputy mayor take over the functions of the mayor unless that position is vacant, amongst other things. So Patricia de Lille is still the mayor of the city of Cape Town. Why then did the DA disregard what was stated in that legal opinion?
Well, it speaks to politicians. It depends what suits them. And sometimes when they make noise, they pretend that perhaps they are clean or they can do things differently. But when they are confronted with political interest, they do exactly what they have been criticizing their opponents for. And that is the situation in the municipality in Cape Town. And like you indicated, the problem is, come 2019, how will this tussle or this standoff going to affect the party's performance in that province? Because we know very well that the Western Cape is actually the face of the DA in terms of campaigns, particularly for the national elections, to say, this is what we are going to do, should you support us in other provinces. It might be a municipality issue or a metro issue, but finally it will affect the DA in terms of the campaign come 2019. For an example, you know very well that the core DA white constituency will still rally behind the DA. In fact, they'll come out in numbers like they did in 2016 elections. They are not going to stay at home. But the problem is the colored constituency. Are they going to say, what you did to Patricia, we are not happy, and that will affect the DA and the black constituency as well. And we know very well that is how the ANC lost that province. You have to ensure that in the Western Cape, all the three constituencies are happy. If you make one constituency not happy, particularly the colored community, you will pay the price.
And speaking of communities in Cape Town, Nomawethu, we know that there has been about a 40% compliance with the call that was issued by the city of Cape Town for people to use water sparingly. And, you know, what are people saying on the ground? Why are they not heeding this call? As we understand, day zero is now on the 21st of April. And if things carry on the way they are, that might even be triggered to arrive faster.
Well, from the meeting last week, Sakina, you'll remember that we've now been dropped to 50 liters per person a day, which is not a lot of water at all. I mean, if you drive into Cape Town, the only thing that people are talking about at the moment is the water crisis and what's going to happen. And with day zero now set for the 21st of April, that's about 3 months away. So people are really, really worried about the situation with regards to water in Cape Town. But you'll remember that opposition parties in the city council in Cape Town have actually blamed Patricia or the City of Cape Town administration for not actually doing something about this earlier, because apparently they were cautioned that there would be a water crisis about 10 years ago, and they didn't do anything about it. So it actually not only affects people on the ground, but what's happening in the city of Cape Town. Hence, the DA is actually making sure that they're working hard to please their voters within the city of Cape Town, to put someone else there to ensure that projects are actually done properly. So it's actually going to be very interesting to see if there are going to be any changes in the city now that Ian Neilson has been put forward to ensure that he brings a turnaround strategy with regards to water. But I must say that people are very unhappy about the situation, and they're calling for the city of Cape Town to ensure that there is water in their taps, Sakina.
Well, that situation actually slightly worse because during the week, Africa Check, I think, did a fact-checking around this particular issue, and they found that Grant Haskin, I think from the ACDP, he had actually put out that this warning had actually been issued some 15 years ago, and it was not heeded, and that proved to be correct. There are council, documents to this regard showing that they were aware that there was an impending problem, but of course nothing was done to try and avert it, or maybe whatever was done was not sufficient in this regard. Well, with all of that said, I mean, it proves that there are still very interesting developments to come. Tony Leon being roped in to do communications in this regard, Sophie, for the city of Cape Town, and Kosatu very scathing of that, saying, so you bring Tony Leon in, you pay him R500,000 to tell the people of Cape Town that it's not raining.
Indeed, even within the DA itself, you know that much as we know that Tony Leon was the leader of the DA, there are different views in terms of her style of leadership and what he has been doing, and at times he takes sides. Therefore, I think, of course, the concerns will be raised from different quarters, and I think it is a problem, but you've raised a critical issue to say 15 years ago. Was Patricia de Lille a mayor 15 years ago?
Indeed, she wasn't. But it's the same thing of, different administrations having to take responsibility, whether they were there or not. You are running the city. And Lukona Nguni, just from a political perspective, again, many ethical issues, many political issues being put forward here. But what do you make of Patricia de Lille being stripped as basically leading that project with communication around the water, then the drought situation in Cape Town?
Sakina, I think where I'm concerned really is that we are focusing on politics and personality politics around what is literally an imminent humanitarian crisis. And I do not see the DA, even its own leadership, appreciating the seriousness of what it means to arrive at day zero in a big city like Cape Town, in one of the 3 capitals of the country. I am much baffled by the lacking political commitment in all spheres of governance, from local to provincial and national, to actually come up with a pact. Today, as we sit here, no one has told us categorically how they wish to resolve the imminent crisis. What happens when you reach day zero? What do you do with the city? What do you do with the schools? What do you do with the hospitals? What do you do with serious issues that affect humanity on a day-to-day basis? This is the discussion that we should be probing further on these politicians. Because what the DA is doing in the city of Cape Town is being busy with petty politics that really have to do with trying to reconfigure in some way or the other politics in Cape Town in preparation for all these congresses that are coming up within the party. And we are not getting evidence. Even how they've dealt with Mayor de Lille is quite troublesome. They say, no, let us charge you and then investigate you later. But you only charge a person on the balance of probabilities with the evidence that you have before you, pending, you've done an investigation, then you charge and then you prosecute. Because when you charge and then you investigate, it could be a very prolonged period of a dark cloud hanging over an individual, and there's a seeming point there of justice not being done. But that's one thing. Those are internal party politics. That's an internal DA problem that has shown us over the years that they are unable to deal with serious political strife within the party. You saw how they handled the Helen Zille matter, where someone gets suspended from party activities and then you do not know why they are still entrusted to actually govern on behalf of the party if they can't be trusted to be part of party activities. So you see a DA that is literally quite at pains to come up with a way of dealing with internal contestations of power within the party. But I am less concerned about that when it comes to Cape Town right now. I'm more concerned about a lacking agency from politicians when there is good evidence in front of them that we are faced with a humanitarian crisis that in part has been created by a lack of appreciation of evidence by policymakers, because people have been sounding the alarm bell on this issue for years, but they were ignored. Why? Because politicians just don't tend to appreciate good and quality research that is, I call it preemptive research, which tells you how do you change course. We were once here with ESCOM, we are now here with Cape Town, where research has not been appreciated. But what mitigating plans do we have if indeed we arrive at day zero? Do we have confidence as a country that the people of the city of Cape Town would not be adversely affected in a way that we could even possibly lose lives if we allow such a thing to happen?
Well, it seems as though it is a fait accompli as far as Patricia de Lille's future is concerned. The DA moving on, marching towards that position where she will be stripped ultimately of whatever powers she may be enjoying. So the question that Lukhona Nguni poses there, if then she is not the person to carry out these functions of the mayor, why do you keep her in the position? Why don't you just let her go? Well, Lukhona Nguni, thank you, and also Nomawe to Solwandle in Cape Town. And after the break, when we come back, we'll unpack the SABC SASSA interview controversy when we return.
We cross live, give updates and cover sport.
The observer missions, what are they saying?
It will be a very difficult announcement to make, to say whether these elections have been free and fair.
1 in every 100 people are diagnosed with arthritis daily. In an effort to raise awareness, a handful of elderly women, they took to the streets of Soweto to stretch their fight against the ailment.
Western Province upset the Sharks by 33 points to 21 to be crowned the 2017 Currie Cup champions at the Kings Park Stadium.
In Durban.
On time with weather every hour, all the time. For all news, stay tuned to AM News every Saturday and Sunday at 10:00 hours Central African Time.
Jumbo Africa, welcome to the newsroom. I'm Elvis Preslin. I'm Ken Makamara.
Let us build our continent brick by brick, stone by stone, until we achieve.
Plus, had asked the court to review and cancel the contract after adverse findings by both the Auditor General as well as the Public Protector.
Well, Christianity is under attack globally. It has been from the beginning of time.
Get all the dominating stories locally and globally on Newsroom every Monday to Friday from 9 a.m.
And you're watching Media Monitor on SABC News Channel 404. Now, SABC 3's Real Talk with Anele Mdota came under fire from social media users this week after reports emerged that the SABC received between R250,000 to about R500,000 for Social Development Minister Batabile Dlamini to appear on the show. Dlamini's department insists that there is nothing untoward in paying the SABC to host ministers in a bid to boost their profiles. However, the SABC released a statement admitting that it breached its own policies and that it will put measures in place to avoid that recurring in future. And here is some of what went down this week.
The 149,000 that we are talking about, because I know people are talking about 500,000, but we are talking 149,000. That money has not as yet been paid to the SABC. And because it has not been paid as yet, we have, the board has decided that we should not invoice for that because the SABC does not charge for interviews. Therefore, it must be made clear. But while we are saying that, we are also saying we invoice people in cases where whatever we are dealing with is a campaign that they are working on, which is about exposing their policies and their programs. That we charge. Because people mustn't say that we are not charging completely for anything, but we don't charge for interviews specifically.
And that was SABC spokesperson Kaiser Khanyocha indicating the board's position on this matter. And for more on this discussion, we joined on the line now by Professor Glenda Daniels from Media Studies at Wits University and also the chair of SANEF's Ethics and Diversity Committee. Professor Glenda Daniels, thanks for speaking to us this morning.
It's a pleasure to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Firstly, Professor Daniels, what do you make of the interview itself? Some people saying that taxpayers' money was wasted on a vanity project for Minister Dlamini. What's your take on this?
Well, it's much worse than a vanity project. I think, that's fairly euphemistic, although, of course, it was a vanity project. It was more of a hagiography, which is a praise song to a particular person. And that is advertising. It's advertorial and it's advertising. It's not editorial, because the minister, as we know, has a very bad reputation regarding SASSA and the payments debacle that we experienced. She was actually even in the Concord. So the journalist who interviewed her, Anele, didn't even raise those issues. So it's worse. I mean, it's beyond a vanity project. Let's put it that way.
So Minister Batabile Dlamini's office also stating that she is being demonized by the media, and perhaps that's one reason why they would have felt the need to go the route that they did.
Nobody demonizes anybody. People demonize themselves by what they do, their own actions, and your actions speak for themselves. So the media don't go out of their way to demonize anyone. If there's something to be exposed about somebody, if somebody is inept or corrupt or has done and said embarrassing things or cannot get social grants, payments done by the manner in which they were supposed to be and ends up in the Concord, it's not demonizing of somebody. It's what the minister herself has done.
And then the SABC coming out and says, it takes full responsibility for the editorial breach. But what does something like this do for the integrity of the SABC? Huge damage to its credibility. The SABC has been known to have blurred the boundaries between, political interference and complete independence before. And now this minister has done this interview in the middle of the ANC conference, which was deeply divided into factions, and she was part of one faction. To have done such a talk show in the middle of it all is not a good idea. The SABC itself, this interview itself, goes against the code of ethics of journalism in just broad and general terms, against the Press Council's terms in South Africa. We don't pay for interviews in South Africa, and against the SABC's own editorial charter and against the Broadcasting Act. So, in fact, it's down-envelope journalism because it hasn't been marked as advertorial. And it screams political interference, and the SABC itself has allowed itself to... that, of course, is all the talk around what's happened this week on the show Real Talk with Anele Mdota, who's the host of that particular show. And unfortunately, all we have time for this morning, as we have run out. And thank you for watching our show, Media Monitor. And we hope that you'll join us again same time next week. And for me and the rest of the team, have a good day and stay blessed.
We cross live, give updates and cover sport.
The observer missions, what are they saying?
It will be a very difficult announcement to make, to say whether these elections have been free and fair.
1 in every 100 people are diagnosed with arthritis daily. In an effort to raise awareness, a handful of elderly women, they took to the streets of Soweto to stretch their fight against the ailment.